Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
And my name is Dyl. Welcome to our 2025 Best Picture Revisiting Series.
Here are the 10 nominees for Best Motion Picture of the Year.
Anora.
The Brutalist.
A Complete Unknown.
Conclave.
Dune, Part 2.
EMILIA Perez.
I'm Still Here.
Nickel Boys.
The Substance.
And Wicked.
And on today's episode, we'll be discussing EMILIA Perez, which racked up 13 Academy Award nominations, and we are joined by two very special guests, Antonio and Swerve Master 18, also known as Jacques.
If you're looking for another video just dunking all over EMILIA Perez, this probably is not going to be the video for you. Today, we're going to be discussing the most controversial, most hated Best Picture nominee of the year. And what we're really looking to do here, and what I'm excited to do, is to jump into this with a bit more of a measured perspective. We're going to talk about all the controversies. We're going to talk about the film, but for people who are sifting through all of this discourse about EMILIA Perez and just seeing non-stop slam after slam after slam, we want to give a video that's a little bit more of a step back perspective from everything that is being talked about with this movie. And our goal here, we're not trying to defend the movie or its controversies, but we just want to cut through the noise, because while there's a lot of legitimate things to criticize this movie about, there's a lot of bad faith readings that are going around online, and we kind of want to discuss the film without all of that. So let's dive into those controversies, right? That's what people are probably clicking on the video for. That's what people want to know about. Oh my God. Oh my God. What is happening with this movie? What? When I saw this at Cannes back in May, I knew that this was going to be a thing. I knew that people were not going to take lightly this film, but it's gotten so much worse than anyone could have ever imagined. I mean,
It's such a weird thing to really see, because I know that some of the people here saw the movie all the way back at the Cannes Film Festival when there was really no buzz around the movie. It was just, hey, this thing premiering that you don't know much about besides the actors involved. And I had the honor of seeing this film at the London Film Festival, so a few months of hearing the initial discourse out of Cannes, and to me, I had heard oh, this is a movie that you either love or hate. But a lot of the controversies that have sparked since this film has hit more domestic audiences, has hit Netflix, this film really hit some aspects that I loved. It also had a lot of issues, but I would have never imagined that it would become this divisive so many months later, and it would be one of the worst skewing Best Picture nominees ever on LETTERBOXD. And the skew, if you look at it and it's just to go down each and every day, it doesn't even look real. And it's so crazy that we live in a world where a film that could potentially go under 2 on LETTERBOXD could win Best Picture. Just to continue, just to talk about this movie at large, you've never seen a movie like EMILIA Perez before, and honestly, you'll probably never see another one like it again, because somehow Jacques Audiard, with his wild French sensibilities, took this telenovela style story and transformed it into this sprawling and outlandish wacky film. And does it work for me all the time? Not really. But one thing you can't say about EMILIA Perez is that it's not either entertaining, eye-catching, or intriguing. The first 30, 40 minutes, however long it is until we have our transition, is just so absolutely riveting. I love this premise of a lawyer who is stuck in a monotonous life looking for a fresh start and finding, oddly enough, a cartel boss who's on the complete opposite end of it. Someone who has everything they've ever wanted, but has a chance to reinvent themselves and be true to who they have always been. And the musical numbers, it is a musical after all, are so stylish. The commentary is sharp for the most part, I guess. And these moments just really, really hit hard for me when they're supposed to. And I've seen this film 3 times now. London Film Festival, at home with family, and again for this series the other day. And the film still continues to work for me. Then we kind of have a time jump where some stuff starts to fall apart, and some of my issues with the film start to arise. And I think this is where some people at large struggle with EMILIA Perez, the ones who actually give the film a chance and actually watch it. But Ultimately, my case for Emilia Perez at the end of the day is this is not a film. I mean, I know I'm not the right person to say this, but it's not a film about the transgender experience, at least from what Audiard has seemed to talk about in his Q&As about the process of writing and directing the film. I find this more to be a journey that mirrors what we typically see of someone who is fresh out of being incarcerated or someone who finds religion sometime in their life, like those type of films. The central question of, is a person truly redeemable and capable of starting over, stepping into new shoes, or are they truly who they've always been, just with a new set of clothes on?
Antonio, you saw this movie at Cannes the same time that I did, and I want to hear your perspective as someone from Mexico watching this film for the first time all the way back in May. How did you feel about it then, and have your feelings changed at all about the film in the months since?
Well, yeah, thanks for asking me that. And yeah, it's kind of crazy thinking about the fact that, again, I saw this movie a day after its world premiere, where none of these headlines and controversies were out. I mean, it was just a movie that, it was from a director that I really loved, Jacques Audiard. And, him once again being very versatile with his filmmaking, making a musical entirely in Spanish. I was like, I'm intrigued. And, based on how I saw the movie, I found it, effective and when I saw it, I obviously was like, okay, this movie will probably be a bit divisive because, it's definitely aiming to swing for the fences, It's not trying to be like, I guess, a people pleaser. You're either going to roll with its like absurdity or not. So I guess that's how I mainly felt about it. And I guess in my case, being someone that has spent most of my life in Mexico, watching this movie was a way of, really I mean, again, even though this movie was made by French filmmakers, it was a movie that I found that it was able to capture certain things of Mexico properly, and it also made me, I mean, especially at the very end, it's the kind of movie that where I'm just watching it and I'm just like, I wish that like whatever happened in this movie could just kind of translate to real life. Like for example, like having people who are narcotics actually want to, I guess, have a transition period to I don't know, yeah, to I don't know, make amends and have a redemption arc. It's again, it's the kind of thing where that's the first reaction I had like when the movie was ending, and you see all those people like carrying, yeah, like remembering Emilia Perez for like what for supposedly what she yeah what people think that she did, which is like I guess make amends for everything that she was trying to do bad before.
So I actually caught this at the Toronto Film Festival. It was the last screening that I had before I had to like leave the city. So I heard a lot of chatter about the movie, especially from a couple like YouTubers that I was like following around. And a lot of them were just like mixed about it. Either they were just like, okay, it was okay, or some people were just like, yeah, this is not a good movie. So I just took those like reactions, and then I also been following like the Cannes trajectory all the way to the fall festival. So I was just like, okay, I have like all this like formula in my mind. And then on top of that, I also love Jacques Audiard. He's one of my favorite directors. So it was just like all that in mind. And then when I saw the movie, I kind of like thought the film was just completely like all over the place in terms of like its themes, and just like how it's like presenting itself as like this story about like a woman who wants to like change her life all the way around. And it was kind of just like one of those things where I took like everything that like Jacques Audiard was trying to do with like the musical numbers and like the opera, and then by the end of it I was just like, okay, it's fine, but I understand that people are going to be like pretty divisive about it. And I actually predicted that this film was probably going to be like an Oscar villain type of deal, but not to like this, level of, craziness that's happening right now.
Gone through a bit of like a journey with this film because when I first saw it at Cannes, I was on the fence with it. I enjoyed a lot of it. I was never bored for a second, but I couldn't stop thinking, man, I need to read other people's thoughts on this. I need to know what other people are going to say. And sitting on it for months afterwards, I kind of just soured more and more thinking about it. But then recently when I rewatched it, I was kind of just sitting there like, no, this kind of kicks ass. Like it's kind of really a fun movie. It's so ridiculously absurd. over the top. It is just a full-blown musical fantasy, and I love the musical genre, and it does so many things that I love in that genre. It's the type of movie that I've never seen anything like this before in my life. I know I will probably never see anything like it again. Like it's the type of movie that who came up with this? Who decided to make this? Who funded it? All of those questions just like ringing through my mind. But I don't mean that negatively at all. Like it's so audacious and big and different. And I totally see where all of the complaints are coming from. I do get that, and I've read so many complaints, and I agree with a lot of them. But I do, no matter how much I read and how much I agree with what people say, I just think this movie is so fun and dumb in like the perfect way, and it's well made. You guys love Jacques Audiard. I love Jacques Audiard. I think this is one of his best films. Alongside, I love his work on Deepon, his Palme d'Or winning film. But yeah, I really love this one.
Again, based on what I was reading online, is that people are acting like, the how the movie basically portrays the sequence of events of this like a drug kingpin, like one's transitioning, like, he's well, she's free of all charges when, but in my the way I viewed it was more that, she, like, where pretty much it's like no matter no matter like what you do with yourself, like, like your past is just going to come back to haunt you, and that's what ends up happening in the movie, where, Emilia Perez ends up dying because of the whole shenanigans that she gets involved in, with her former wife played by Selena Gomez, and the fact that she starts to become more selfish when she realizes that, of course, she's going to want to get married to someone else, which was like the Edgar Ramirez's character, and that leads them to fight about, like, who gets their kids and everything. And so at the end of the day, I feel like, the and yeah, I feel like based on that that approach, for me, I didn't see it as like, oh, this movie's trying to glamorize like this kind of a lifestyle, because we clearly see the character, get what like she deserves, I imagine. And and what I was saying before is that, like, that may have happened, but then at the very end, you see all these people, like Mexican people, worshiping Emilia Perez like she was some kind of a saint, even though, like, she obviously, they don't know her true identity. And I think that just has to do with the message that's just established from like the very beginning of the movie, is the fact that the movie is basically a story of these people dealing with like a corrupt environment. Again, people may see this movie as like being stereotypical, I guess, when it comes to this movie, mainly focusing on like the narcotic and like the violent side of Mexico, where everything seems dangerous and grimy. And again, I just have to say that just because the movie focuses on this aspect of Mexico does not mean that it's stating that everything in Mexico is like that. It's clearly just about this certain aspect, which, again, as someone that's lived there for most of my life, it's not entirely wrong. Where a lot of people in the government, they tend to be involved with those kinds of actions, even though they don't want to say it out loud. A lot of important political figures, they've lied their way into power and have used the help of narcotics with that. Money laundering is also a big thing that happens there. So again, I just feel like this movie is not saying that everything in Mexico is like in Emilia Perez. I just think that's like a certain aspect of Mexico where, that's, I think it just comes down to people being slightly like sensitive extremists in that case. So
I think something that I've seen is people talking a lot about what you're saying, that they feel as though every portrayal of Mexico in media is that sort of portrayal, that sort of Breaking Bad or Sicario look at Mexico as a place that is just a war ground of drugs and kidnappings and everything. And I think that a lot of Mexican viewers are really sick of that portrayal in media. It feels to me like there was blood in the water already with this one, so people really latched onto it. But I think all of the complaints that people have with this one could be leveled at Sicario, could be leveled at Breaking Bad. Films and TV shows and media that really portrays Mexico in not a very positive light. And so I just hope that going forward, people keep the same energy with other media, that it's not just this film, that Emilia Perez is a symptom of a larger problem in terms of how Mexico is exoticized and portrayed in media. It's not just this movie. This movie's not the first. This is just a symptom of something larger.
The crazy thing is that a lot of these controversies were present before the last week, and this film still led Oscar nominations with 13 of them. So why don't we hop into the nominations of Emilia Perez, starting things off with Best Director. And Matt, you talked about this earlier when talking about some of the controversies about the film, as this is such a crazy, unique, distinctive vision, and who would have thought of making something like this, taking this telenovela soap opera novel and transforming it into a musical that's grand, it's bold, it's audacious, and clearly the industry has been eating up from top to bottom. And like personally, Jacques Audiard, he would not be in my 5 if I were to have a ballot, but I fully get why he's in here, and I fully get why he is still in win contention for some people out there. Is the people who love this movie love it because of the vision behind the camera, and I can totally see this surprising. Maybe some of these controversies that have popped up in the last few days stop it, but even before that, I was considering maybe him surprising at DGA or him surprising at BAFTA, even at the Golden Globe loss, because the way that Audiard makes this film so, like I said before, compelling and engaging from his visual style, I think really makes up for some of the other film's weaknesses over in the screenplay department. And I said this before when we're talking about La Vaginoplastia, but I really dug the vibe of that scene of how campy it was, how out there it was. And I wish a lot of the rest of the film kept that same style, but even though it doesn't, a lot of the musical sequences here are shot or directed in a way that you just would not expect a film like this or a musical film at whole to really do. I think about like Para or El Mal, of how they do it in such a unique and interesting way.
I actually was really taken aback by some of the direction choices in this movie, especially with El Mal and Mi Camino. I think those two songs I really started thinking about lately, and I just been spinning it on my playlists. And I understand some of the criticisms with just the direction and how some of the themes are kind of scattered shot. But even then, I think this movie has a rhythm to it. It plays out like an opera, and kind of almost like a dark fairy tale in some parts, especially in the beginning. But I wouldn't be surprised if this does take Best Director, since they really do love this movie.
I think it's very bold and ambitious again for Jacques Audiard to make a musical in a language he doesn't even speak. And again, and also bringing a very bold and unique approach to it. In my opinion, bringing the best out of many actors on screen. Like, this is the best I've ever seen Zoe Saldana and Karla Sofia Gascon and Selena Gomez ever in a movie. So I would feel, and again, I really love Emilia Perez as a movie. He would be in my director 5 personally, and I'm just really happy to see Jacques Audiard finally get some recognition in his career. Made really great movies that have not reached this far into the Academy. He would not be my pick to win, but I'm very happy to see him recognized here, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with what you were saying, Antonio. Ambitious is the perfect word for it. It is a swing for the fences. Whether every single moment works, that's another matter, but it is constantly trying to do something huge and different and unique. And say what you will about the movie, it's never boring. Jack, I like that you brought up pacing, because it definitely has a great pace to it. It is never for a second dull. There's not one moment that feels like it's wasted. It's just, it propels you through this story with a distinct visual language. I think his nomination is great. Now, on the other hand, if thinking of directing not just from a purely visual standpoint, I do think that something I do take issue with is that he has repeatedly said that he had no interest in learning about the subject matter. He didn't want to go to Mexico to research the film. He already emotionally knew everything he needed to. And that's something that takes away a lot. And I think that while I've said my piece about authenticity in this movie and in the musical genre as a whole, I do think it is a director's responsibility if they are making a film outside of their own experiences to do the damn work. And it's clear that he had no interest in doing the damn work.
And I guess that's going to lead us over to lead actress. And we've talked about the controversy already so far, which for a lot of people may have soured them on this performance. But at least inside the film, I find Karla Sofia Gascon to be really, really good. She really surprised me here, especially hearing some of those early reports out of Cannes of how she was, quote, quote, the weakest of the big three. But to me, I think she has some of the most standout sequences inside the entire film because, like, this is the opportunity of a lifetime for so many people. Essentially, she is getting to play two very different characters who have a lot of similarities throughout the film. And, like, the way that she portrays Manitas is, like, Manitas is this character who we don't know much about, but we experience through Zoe Saldana as Rita. And what Rita believes of Manitas is not the way that Karla portrays that side of the character. And I really like the elements that she brought to this crime boss, but making him very down to earth and relatable, and as well as making it someone who you can tell has this sense of longing to really be able to express their true emotional side of their character. And then we get into the second half where she now is portraying the fully realized version of Emilia Perez. She gets to shine even more because she is the same vulnerable, open person as before, but now she gets to really be radiant throughout and have some of these standout musical sequences. And these are both ones that involve loud belting, as we see in some musical, but also some of the quieter moments throughout. And like, it just kind of stinks, I think, at large, as well as for myself, that a lot of the off-screen controversies are really clouding the future and current praise for this performance.
I was really taken aback by her performance with like a lot of like the musical numbers, especially Papa and the other musical number where she's singing about her girlfriend Epifina. Those two scenes like really stuck out with me with her performance, and then just like in general, like her emotional journey from this person that she was before up to like this newer person that still has like the same past like anger in terms of the cartel violence. I thought she really like held it down.
Like I said, before this, she was, she was in a some very popular Mexican movies, and again, I would not have been able to notice like the amount of depth that she brings to a character like this one day, and it was so sudden. Me realizing, oh, Karla Sofia, I guess, like all the way from Ken, being like, oh, no, she was in this movie that I saw 10 years ago back in Mexico. Oh my God, and now, yeah, and again, what you guys were saying, her being able to balance like these two different sides of her with like these very subtle shifts when it comes for specific sequences. Again, like I said, I think she brought, she gave it her all when it came to like the musical aspects and dramatic aspects of the film. And yeah, overall, and again, as the titular role of the movie, she did a great and believable job.
It is heartbreaking to me that she's the face of the movie and she's the heart of the movie. And I do think going forward, it's going to be tainted looking at it just because of all of the things that she said, all of the way that she has chosen through the years to portray herself online. It's really unfortunate to see those things linked to this character, to this movie, because I think that her work is beautiful in the film. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you guys are saying. I would add that the thing that I love most about this performance is the sort of push and pull between wanting to be the person that she truly is and regretting the person that she was, but being unable to change that was and trying to reconcile as her true self. And it's painful to watch because you know that pull back to the past is what's going to lead her inevitably to a tragic conclusion in like a very Greek sense to it. It's sad to watch because ultimately, we're seeing someone who is truly discovering who she is, but in doing so is realizing that she's been living so far outside of her values for her entire life. Um, but yeah, I just love that aspect, the performance, that pull of the past, and how that is truly something tragic that she experiences.
¿Cuánto tiempo más tenemos que ganar? ¿Cuánto tiempo más tenemos que perder? Y la bola de mis disque amigos dice, ¿cuándo te vas a casar, a tener hijos?
That will now bring us over to Best Supporting Actress, and I'll be upfront here saying I'm a huge Zoe Saldana fan. I found her to be fantastic in the Guardians movies. She steals the show in Avatar, and she's had such a varied career, and I think that's one of the reasons why even the people who really hate and despise Emilia Perez are coming out of it saying that Saldana is the best here, because it's so nice to see her challenge herself with a role like Rita that we haven't seen her do for so long, especially having such a long history inside of blockbusters. And she is great for the most part, and I think the issues that comes with her characters are more to the writing, which is overall my biggest issue with the film. But for Saldana's performance itself, she dominates the first half of this film, and that's when I think the movie works its best throughout the themes as well as the musical numbers. And as the movie goes on, she disappears a little bit more, but I mean, that El Mal sequence in the second half, the singing, the dancing in tandem with the camera work, the production design, the lighting, makes for a show-stopping number and one of the best scenes of the year at large. And I really like one of the earlier songs, sorry for the butchering here, but Toda Wainata. I think this sequence and the song, especially with reading the lyrics as they pop up on screen, really give a great starting point for Rita's character, and you see why she ultimately decides to accept this offer from Meninas, because she has put in so much work inside her career and hasn't seen any positives to it. So not akin to Meninas and Emilia Perez, but she has been basically living a life that she isn't fully happy with and wants to be able to be her true self, and she gets this opportunity. And I really like the duality between these characters and how they work with one another throughout the film.
It is a little bit like category fraud, because her character is just literally like the central, kind of like the central character. You follow her from like the beginning, and then kind of like halfway through, it's Emilia Perez's story, but it's whatever. But I really got like into her performance in this movie. I didn't know that she can like actually sing and dance. This is like actually the first time that I've actually seen her like do all these things. I've only seen her in like the Avatar movies, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, just like big Hollywood blockbuster like action movies. So like seeing this, I was like taken aback by just like her overall like theatrical performance. And I do have some problems with like the actual character, especially since like the character is just like taking along with like the journey and not like actually questioning like some of the morals that Emilia Perez is going through. Instead, she's just kind of like going about with it. But even then, I think Zoe Saldana's performance is really great. And the scene where like she's like laughing and crying after everything is done, like the surgery is done and everything, and she has like the money. That was like a big like standout scene that I really like took from her performance. And then of course like the El Mal musical sequence was really, really great.
Yeah, so I mean, when I first saw this movie back in Cannes and like the credits roll, I immediately said to myself, "Oh my God, I hope Zoe Saldana wins Best Actress," because I was like so blown. Honestly, yeah, I think Zoe Saldana gives the best performance of the entire movie. And just the fact that I acknowledge the thankfully the César Awards, which are like the equivalent to like the French Academy Awards, they actually nominated Zoe Saldana in lead along with Sofia Gascon. So I just want to, yeah, glad that they did that. Even though it's fine that she's also supporting, because technically, I guess 1/3 of the movie is through Zoe Saldana's perspective, and I guess 2/3 are Emilia Perez's perspective. So. But still, yeah, I mean, she floored me in the movie. And again, I had never seen her in a role ever where she spoke entirely in Spanish. And the fact that she was doing that while, having incredible vocals and, performing these highly, yeah, really great, like choreographed dances. I was like, yeah. And also, again, her also being like kind of the emotional center in like certain segments, especially in the beginning with the El Alegato song, her describing her tiredness of just working for, yeah, corrupt individuals who, buy, yeah, justice in their favor. Yeah, overall, like she floored me in this movie, and I'm perfectly honestly, she would be my supporting actress winner personally if the entire year. And I'm just really happy to see her this to get this kind of recognition, and I really hope she decides to do more Spanish speaking roles because she did an amazing, incredible job in this movie.
With this performance, I'm gonna come a bit on the other side of it. It didn't stand out to me when I first saw it, and even watching the film now, I genuinely prefer Selena Gomez in terms of supporting performances in it. I just feel like even though all of the best song and dance numbers are coming from Zoe Saldana, and she's performing the hell out of all of those songs, the way that she moves, the choreography is fantastic that she's able to do in this. But at the same time, on an emotional level, I'm not getting as much from this performance as I am from some of the other performers, from Karla or Selena.
I actually kind of agree with you also with like Selena Gomez. And the first time I watched it, I was like kind of flip-flopping between Selena Gomez's performance and like how she was portraying herself with this character. But then when I saw it for like a second time, I was just like, you know what? I think I actually like Selena Gomez's performance in this, especially her like presenting herself as like this American woman who's trapped in a foreign land that she doesn't like understand, like the entire like language and like overall like perspective of Mexico. And I took that like as kind of like my journey with my family, like on the other side of like Africa, like how I present myself when I go to like back home. So it was really nice to see that like type of performance portrayed here, and I actually do like Selena Gomez's character as a whole, and she gets like a lot of like good musical moments, especially the introduction with like the bedroom. Like I actually really like that musical number.
I mean, with Selena Gomez, you always have this weird dichotomy around her, whether it's people who overtly love her or people who completely go out of their way to hate on her every action and her every move. And
Like Karla Sofia Gascon.
exactly. It's like I do prefer Saldana here, but I do think Gomez is giving a good performance. Again, using another controversy with this film that isn't actually inside of the film is the fact that people say like, oh, she can't speak proper Spanish, but it's described that she is playing an American outside of her element inside Mexico, and I think that she portrays that character very well. And I mean, maybe this is a little controversial or not. I wish we had more time with her and her relationship with Gustavo. I thought their sequence for me Camino was really fun, and I would have liked a little bit more build up to our emotional climax that we got at the end, because while it was effective, having more time with those two to really understand their element would have made that sequence, I think, hit a little bit harder. Adapted screenplay is a category we really kind of talked extensive about when talking about the controversies as a whole. So I guess just to go into a little bit more, one of the elements I really liked is how it goes about the film's overall message of, can you truly move on from your past actions and become the person you've always wanted to be? And I think the film has a lot of pros and cons with that, and I think that has been a major talking point with the film overall online. It's people who either vibe with that interpretation or people who think that representation of making Manitas the bad guy and Emilia the good woman transition, that is ultimately the film's biggest issue. And I guess that's where I leave it open to y'all, is where do you really stand on this screenplay from top to bottom?
Brings like a lot of the like points home with like the movie itself. I still have like a problem with like some of the themes not being like stretched out enough. Especially with just like the NGO storyline, where it just like gets like tacked on like in the beginning, and you're just like, oh, now we're doing this. Like it kind of like threw me off the first time I watched it. But then I think when you watch it again and again, it kind of like makes sense. But I have a problem with just like the key points of like what Audiard was trying to do in terms of just like where you want to like go. Do you want to like go like about like how these missing kids are kind of like are missing and you have to like find them. So you have to like create like this NGO. You can just do that. Or is it really just about like this woman who's trying to live her life, but her past is coming back to her?
I totally get what you're saying there, and I've heard a lot of that criticism with it. People saying that the movie's a bit all over the place, a bit incoherent, a little bit of spaghetti all over the place. But to me, I feel like the amount that it tries to touch on, the amount that it's doing, does make it feel like something much larger. Every scene, it's not zoning into one specific thing, and I do appreciate that because otherwise it would be very easy to read it as this is like is specifically a film about the trans experience. This is specifically a film about Mexico. This is specifically a film about justice for victims of the cartel. This is specifically a film about this, but it just goes for so much more. And in doing so, I think it makes it much more clear that it is, at least in my opinion, a tragedy specifically centered around this one character. That it's not necessarily trying to be an all-encompassing take on any one of these social issues, but rather is using those social issues as a way to talk about and discuss that character. And maybe that could be seen as an issue with the film at large, that it is using those social issues as a bit of a prop to advance this character. But at the same time, I think it works. And being a huge fan of musical theater, I've seen a lot of musicals where the scenes where people talk only exist as a way to get you from point A to point B from one song to the next. But here, the way that it blends the music and the talking scenes, it feels like both of them have purpose. It never feels like we're just using one to get to the next. And that is not easy to do.
Even though a lot of events technically happen in the entire course of this movie, overall, I still think there is a focus when it comes to like the journey that we're seeing of this person who thinks that, he can just get away with, transitioning, and then all his previous faults are just like gone. And then we see that kind of bite him back, towards the very end. So yeah, again, that's why I really don't see the movie as like a mess, I guess, because that journey is still clear throughout the whole movie. And again, part of what I'm riveting about of the movie is just that, like, it just constantly had me surprised, like from one scene to another, where I was honestly not sure in which direction the movie was going to go in, and that just made it even more compelling to witness everything going on, and the fact that like the characters are given enough depth where they all have their own things going on, and by the end they all come to us to their own change, I guess. And again, I know there's controversies when it comes to like how the movie depicts Mexico, but based on what the movie's going for, I think it ends up succeeding in that case, considering that again, I saw the movies like people dealing with with living in a corrupt world and just have to deal with it in that manner. Even though there are parts, I guess, certain scenes, especially towards like the middle of the movie, where I feel like if they were probably shortened or cut, I guess the pace would have just flowed better, I'd say. But overall, I'm fine with the screenplay nomination.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the points that y'all just made there really relate over to the editing nomination as well, because Matt, you talk about getting from one scene to the next, and I feel like the pacing of the editing makes that feel accomplished, where both elements seem as integral to the story overall because of the energy that they both have. And then, Jack, you talked a little bit before about that argument sequence, where that is one of the true editing feats of the entire film at large. And Antonio, as you talked about, with how many things are surprising throughout, that is a feat of, yes, screenwriting, but also in the way the film is cut to keep you engaged and entertained throughout a 2:15, 2:20 length movie. And it's like, there are some editing faults for me. I am not as in love with the pacing overall as the three of you are, but I do find a lot of these musical numbers and the dialogue sequences both have very impressive editing to keep you engaged, even if what you're watching unfold may not be the most entertaining
Something that I really appreciate in the editing here is just that this, alongside the cinematography, I feel like any good modern musical has to understand that they're not just working with song and dance. The camera and the edit must be a part of that. There has to be a rhythm that comes through, even in how you're cutting the scenes together. And I feel like every single song sequence in this understands that the rhythm of the edit, the way that the cuts are used or not used, is going to inform how we view each of those numbers. So yeah, I think it's spectacular editing, just in how it does the musical sequences. It's flashy, it's fast, and it emphasizes how you're supposed to be feeling in each of those songs.
Again, throughout the entire course of this movie, I never found myself feeling bored or, wanting the movie to just like wrap up. And I think that's praise, for like really good editing also. I mean, from the very beginning of the movie where, you're thrust into this world. I mean, everything, like that, like things are established and you're just like, the movie does a good job setting up the world and like what you're ready to, be a part of. And it just keeps it up the whole way through, honestly. And especially, with like the really precise cutting during the musical segments of like, with a quick insert or a shot exactly during a specific moment in in the song, which, just makes the tiny details to stand out even more, honestly. Yeah, I mean, that's praise to the editor. And apparently, Jacques Audiard and his editor are kind of like the Martin Scorsese and the film A Shoemaker of France, because they've been working together for decades, honestly.
Exceso de mis cuentas.
Calma, tranquila.
¿Cómo tiene
Fue la
acceso?
voluntad de Manitas, tu marido. Quería protegerte.
Quiero a mis hijos.
Si quieres recuperar a tus hijos, tienes que apagar el fuego.
Quiero a mis hijos.
Hay que apagar el fuego.
Quiero a mis hijos.
And I think that's one of the reasons why this film's racked up so many nominations, is something that you just said there, Antonio, is how all these technical elements and crafts are handled with such detail that they feel seamless working together and keep everything feeling engaging and dynamic throughout, because the cinematography as well, especially in these musical sequences, is what truly shines for me. Because I talked a little bit about this before when you talked about music, but like that Para sequence, when it has that slow zoom out with all the floating heads in the spotlight, and the tracking shots inside that song are really dynamic for me. Of an El Mall, everything that goes in that scene, but especially the cinematography, makes you feel like you're in the room with Zoe Saldana as she is just popping off at all these people around her, and her fantastic performance. And the cinematography for me is what really makes and breaks musicals. And for Emilia Perez, it elevates these songs and makes them so engaging and so electric. And it's something that I understand why people may have issues with some more of the dialogue scenes, but the musical sequences and their cinematography is definitely some of the year's best.
So I actually caught this movie the second time in 35 millimeter at the Paris Theater. I know it's not shot in 35 millimeter, but I felt like the actual depth of the movie more with just like the transfer to digital to 35 millimeter. So like when I'm watching it, I was just like, I felt like I was like really like in it, especially like the opening sequence. And a lot of like the cinematography choices are like very cinematic, and it plays a lot with just like camera movements, especially in the second song, and also like El Mal.
I mean, I'm just remembering very distinct parts for how like shots were put together, especially during a lot of the musical sequences with Zoe Saldana. When the camera would do like these like super like whip pans or quick zooms, and again for the approach of the music, which is that it's like bombastic and grand and like absurd in that case. It ends up really fitting, and it's also something that just makes these musical sequences stand out even more. And I have to yeah. Again, it's a movie with a lot of energy when it comes to like how it's shot, and especially again during the vaginoplasty song, you have like this camera moving around on the dolly, and with the overhead shot, and again it's a very dynamically it's a film with a grand dynamic presentation, and I'm again I don't know if it would make my top five personally of the year, but for what it was going for and the approach that it took, it just added it just gave the movie more personality and made it stand out even more as a film in that case.
Something that I love about the cinematography here is the use of darkness and the way that the lights go up and down to emphasize whether we're in reality or we're in this sort of exaggerated state of musical surreality, that fantasy element. There's a lot of moments where everything goes dark and it's almost as though the characters are existing in sort of a void. And it reminds me a lot of something like Chicago, which uses that a lot to emphasize the dream world versus the real world. And when you're doing a musical, that really helps sell the suspension of disbelief. And so I just appreciate the way that they use lighting and whether we're in darkness or we are in light to emphasize where we are in the story and to guide us along that journey of, do we believe what's going on? Is it real? Or is this one of those musical fantasy sequences?
I mean, you said it looks stunning. It sounds stunning as well. Best sound. That sequence with the guns in the back half of the film, apparently that's not the live audio. Everything was matched in post. Simply incredible stuff. That's all I really have to say about sound. Antonio, what were some of your sound highlights of Emilia Perez?
I was going to mention that. I mean, as soon as I saw that in the movie, I was just like, my God, like there was such a great attention to detail. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the mixing, being a grand musical, like it was well done, I guess it was certainly well done when it came to, hearing the vocals and yeah, properly along with matching with the music.
It's a bit of a shame that movies that go to Netflix, a lot of people will never actually experience how well done the sound design is. I think back to like Roma. Roma has my favorite sound mix of any movie ever. That movie, I remember seeing Roma in theaters, and at a certain point, I remember turning around and wanting to ask the people behind me to shut up. But there was no one behind me. It's just the movie's sound design that makes you feel as though people are talking all around you. And most people are never going to experience that. If you're watching at home on your TV's sound bar, you're not going to get the impact of what they did with the sound design here. So ultimately, I don't really have anything to say about sound because 2 out of the 3 times that I've seen this have not been in a theatrical environment, have been watching on my TV's crappy speakers. But definitely there's a lot of elements here that require a lot of attention to detail and sound design. I just wish that I was able to appreciate that more. And I wish that people watching at home were able to appreciate that.
I'm glad I saw this like twice in theaters, especially with like the sound mix. I'm really peculiar with like sound mixing. I used to work in that field a little bit, like freelance, but I understand like some of like the choices that this movie makes with like the sound mixing. The one scene that really like stuck out with me was the El Mal scene. There's a moment where Emilia Perez is presenting herself, and like it's an isolated vocal track of her like singing her lyrics compared to like the soundtrack version like on Spotify. It's just like the regular song. So I like that creative choice in the movie. And I also really like some of the sound mixing on again the phone sequence. I really picked up a lot of like the rhythm of the song, because people at home who are watching the movie, they don't like pick up the actual like theatrics of like the song. It's actually a song. There's a rhythm going throughout like that sequence, and it's kind of going in and out between like actual talking and then kind of like not grunting, but like giving like a musical performance. And I was able to like pick that up immediately when I saw it like in theaters compared to like at home.
Yeah, I mean, y'all talk about the sound and how people may not appreciate as much because they're watching at home, but I know in nomination, a lot of people, especially the anti-Emilia Perez crowd, was really talking about it as a potential bad one. Was in Best Makeup and Hairstyling, but for me, the transformation of Gascon into Benitez is really incredible. Like, if you didn't know this was the same actress playing these two parts, you would have never guessed, because it's not just the visual look, but it's like the grills, it's the hair, it's the tattoos, and also in tandem with Gascon's performance before. But like, it's not just the Manitas look. That's not the only reason this film got this nomination, because it's Zoe Saldana herself. The transformation when she is having the down on her luck time as Rita before the money, and the ultimate glow up after it. The eye bags go away, her whole skin, it starts to glow, her hair looks so much more, you could say, wealthy, or whatever term you really want to use. And like, it's just a little stuff throughout the film. It's not like an overtly showcase outside of the Manitas character, but I think this is one that's definitely worth at least a long list shout, if not the nomination.
Yeah, when I first saw this movie at Cannes, I had no idea that was Carlos Sofia Gascon playing the Manitas character. For months, I thought that. I was just like, oh, they just haven't credited this guy yet. I had to hear it from herself that, it took her like like 3 to 5 hours or more to get in on the whole makeup transformation. And I mean, the fact that if the movie is able to make me believe that that it was just like another person, when in reality it was just the same person, I think that's very much worthy of a makeup nomination.
Well, that's going to move us into our final categories, and let's just lump score and these two song nominations together for our total of 13, because I have a bold statement to make. For all of you out there who say the music in Emilia Perez is bad, you got to get your ears checked, because these songs rock. El Mal, we talked about before, it's a banger inside the film and outside the film. When you see the lyrics, when you see how it plays inside, this is the perfect embodiment of what a Best Original Song Oscar winner really should be like. It's impactful, memorable, genre-defined, all inside the film, but also works if you're just listening to the list of nominees on your own. You're like, yeah, this song, it's so cool. And then Mi Camino, we haven't talked much about it in here, but that whole sequence, I know Matt and I have a little bit of a different opinion here, but I rock with it. I like the karaoke aesthetics. It adds to the fun vibeness of the scene. But then when you take this song outside the film, it has its new mix, it has its mastered version. Gomez's vocals are the best, honestly. Hopefully I don't get hate for it here. The best I've ever heard from her. I really like that song. It's a great song outside the film. And then, I mean, I know we live in this era where you can really only have 2 original songs nominated. So, like, if we were back like in the La La Land era, where you could get 3, I mentioned before, Toto Wainato would be a song I would have loved to see get more traction. I think it really adds for the character of Rita, especially early on, laying the groundwork that you may not get just from the character, the more dialogue-focused scenes. But Para, I've mentioned that a few times. That's more of like a visual song that I really liked, but overall the songs in here I feel like are a lot better than a lot of people online are really giving them credit for, and I think that bleeds over to the score as well. Not going to talk much about it here, but I really like how the vocals like harmonize in the background. It makes for some cool aesthetics and scene transitions throughout.
I love how they use the synthesized vocals as a way to kind of make you feel as though there's a Greek chorus leading you through the film, that you're brought into the story by these haunting voices that sound almost electronic, and you're led out of the movie the same way. I just love the way that the score utilizes synth voice. It's just, love that. Love, love, love. I think this score is highly underrated. It has some great themes to it beyond the songs. Just fantastic work. I think it would be very worthy of an Oscar win, even though to me The Brutalist feels like it should be undeniable in the score category.
I really liked the songs. When I first saw it, the first song I took like With Me, and then also I took El Mal and then Mi Camino, and I wanted to listen to those songs over again and over again. And then when I saw it for the second time, I think understood what Jacques Audiard was trying to do with the music, in terms of it being like this crazy blend of like opera, Latin music, hip hop, some like weird like not down tempo like EDM, but like very like ethereal like electronic music. Like all of that blends into like some like really crazy like experimental musical that I took along with. And I also really like the Papa song. I think that song really emotionally got to me. in terms of like the context of the scene and how this character has gone through like this transformation and now she's trying to like come back to her kids, but one of her kids is just only thinking about her papa's smell. And I understand like the lyrics are very like simplified and
Compared to you guys, I think I have a maybe biased perspective considering that I've known Spanish my entire life. So I guess for me it's the kind of thing where I can just hear the music and the lyrics and understand what's happening, but that doesn't take away from, the enjoyment anyone should have for those songs because I think it's an incredible soundtrack also. And I do count the instrumental music of the songs as part of the score. So, and you hearing that just out of context of the lyrics, they have very distinct and fun melodies, which have a great balance between using, I guess, synthesizers and traditional Mexican instruments. I think that's mostly noticeable with the again El Camino and the last song that the character of Adriana Paz sings in memory of Emilia Perez, Las Damas que pasan. Hearing the tuba and the percussion and all that. But yeah, again, this movie without the soundtrack and its score would be something completely different. And from what I heard is that like the composers like Clément Tucol and Camille were heavily involved with the writing process, since you're I guess part of the writing is like the music, because that's what's progressing the story. And in terms of that, I mean, it does what a good musical should do, which is that the songs actually progress the story rather than just feeling like it's like an interruption. Again, without the score, I don't think I would have liked the movie as much, honestly. I think that's just what makes it so distinct and unique, that really enriching and vibrant score that just, throughout is just filled with one unique song after another, I guess. And it's also, and I think it also fits, with this, the best way I think to tell this absurd story is, to, bring it as a musical in that case.
Well, when you rack up 13 nominations, it's really hard to have many snubs to your name. We've talked about Selena Gomez. The only other major snub I think that's really worth talking about would be in production design, because when I first saw this movie at the London Film Festival, I didn't know that these sets were all sound stages. I just assumed that they shot on location. Then talking with Matt and hearing other people talk about the production of this film, you hear that and then you rewatch the film and then now you've rewatched it a third time and you're just in awe that these look so realistic and it's just great production design.
And I think that they use the sound stages very well in order to control the environment. Like I was mentioning in cinematography, the use of darkness and the way that they bring the lights down, bring characters into this sort of void. Of course, they could have done that shooting on sound stages in Mexico, but I mean, you can shoot on a soundstage anywhere, and you sort of need that control that a soundstage gives in order to do that. So I completely get why they were doing that. But
well, it's just crazy to think about the fact that if like Selena Gomez was nominated or costumes or production design, this movie would have like had the all-time record for most nominations for a movie ever at the Academy Awards. It's crazy to think about that, but I mean, I think most of these nominations are deserved in their own way, where it's like all these incredibly creative artists just coming together to make this very distinct film that people I guess are just hating on because they're talking about the circumstances around the movie rather than the film itself.
Well, we've talked about all 13 nominations. We've talked about all the controversies with Emilia Perez, but now it's time to get to my favorite part of this Best Picture Revisiting series, hearing our guest preferential ballot. So, Antonio, why don't you kick us off? Tell us how you would rank the 10 Best Picture nominees going from number 10 to number 1.
Oh, wow. Well, first I have to say that this was like a very good year for Best Picture nominations. I mean, there's not a film in this lineup where I'm just like, why is that there? For the most part, these are movies that I go from like really liking to adoring. And funny enough, the top 4 movies in this list are my top 4 movies of the year. So very appropriate. So I guess number 10 would be A Complete Unknown. Number 9 would be Wicked. Number 8 would be Conclave. Number 7, I'm Still Here. Number 6, Nickel Boys. Number 5, Dune Part 2. And then number 4, well, and then the top 4 are just top four of the 2024 for me. Number four, Emilia Perez. Number three, Honora. Number two, The Brutalist. And the definitive number one, The Substance.
You are our first person to not list Emilia Perez all the way down at number 10. So
Really?
we'll have to see if
Oh.
that lasts. But Jack, I'd love to hear your list as well, starting at number 10 and heading all the way up.
Okay, you just gave it away. I actually put Emilia Perez at number 10. Sorry,
That's
but
Mm.
it's one of those things like I'm like flip-flopping. But we'll see about that. Number 9, I have A Complete Unknown. Number 8, I'm Still Here. Number 7, Wicked. Number 6, Conclave. Number 5, The Substance. Number 4, The Brutalist. Number 3, Dune Part 2. Number 2, Honora, and then number 1, I have Nickel Boys. Yeah, I mean, if I was voting, this would be my like actual ballot because I actually do want to like save this movie as a whole. But yeah, that's just me.
That's a wrap on episode 3 of our 2025 Best Picture Revisiting series. Here's the current combined leaderboard for both our guest and Matt and I's preferential ballot. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode where the Oscar Film Forecast crew will be joining us to discuss I'm Still Here.